The technological achievements of our ancient ancestors were outstanding, and they often don't get enough credit for them. There were things our ancestors could do with bricks and stones in the distant past that we'd struggle to replicate today. So much so that we can't help but wonder if some of the technology of the distant past has been lost. We're not alone in wondering about that. Many people feel the same way, and you might join them after watching this video.
Venture deep into the desolate Peruvian wilds to uncover the haunting enigma of Naupahuaca. Even its name whispers secrets, a temple of the ancients. This structure's true intent remains a ghost, a megalithic throne sliced with impossible razor-sharp precision from one solitary mass of blue stone. While scholars claim its shape mirrors the sacred Andean cross of Inca cosmology, a darker riddle lurks behind. Hidden at the rear, a false door stands etched into the solid rock with surgical accuracy that defies history. To deepen the chilling mystery, the structure's slopes mirror the Great Pyramid of Giza, accurate to within a staggering half-degree. Because this doorway leads to a solid wall, legends scream it is a portal to another dimension. We call that fanciful thinking, yet the stone offers no other explanation.
When Virginia Maxey and Wallace Lane wandered into the dry bed of Owens Lake close to the Coso Mountains in California in 1961, all they really wanted to find were a few geodes to sell in their gift shop. Instead, they found a conundrum of an artifact that's confounded archaeologists and historians ever since. It's known as the Coso artifact, and it consists of a 1920s spark plug inside an iron oxide shell. There's no mystery about where the spark plug came from. It's one of the thousands that were manufactured during the 1920s by a company called Champion. The issue is the iron shell that surrounds it, which is 500,000 years old. The shell formed around the spark plug, and so logic tells us that the spark plug must have been inside it for 500,000 years. You don't need us to tell you that's impossible. Some scientists say that the iron oxide shell grew faster than normal because of porous minerals interacting with the metal spark plug. But the evidence of that is shaky at best. It probably isn't the smoking gun evidence of time travel that some people claim it is, but it's definitely a puzzling anomaly. Our questions about ancient technology aren't limited to Earth. Some of them are literally out of this world. In 2016, a 3-year study into what's been dubbed the keyhole structure on the surface of Mars was concluded by George Haas and his teammates at the Cydonia Institute. They determined that the perfect symmetry of the distinct dome and wedge shape makes it unlikely to have been created by natural erosion. That means that it would have to be artificial, which is a seemingly impossible conclusion to draw about anything on the surface of Mars. It also appears to bear more than a passing resemblance to the kind of keyhole tomb that you'll find in Kofun, Japan. Such structures were built during the early 5th century. We're not for a moment suggesting that there were humans or aliens making regular trips between Japan and Mars back then, but it's odd that the same design appears in both places. Plenty of scientists dispute the Cydonia Institute's findings, but the fact remains that the geometric perfection of the shape isn't consistent with anything we've come to expect from nature.
Our next scientific puzzle hides in plain sight in Egypt. All over the country's ancient monuments, you'll find perfectly drilled holes. We tend to overlook them because drilling perfect holes isn't exactly difficult today, but it ought to have been impossible for people living 2,000 years ago. At the site of Abu Ghurab in Abu Sir, you'll find hundreds of examples of the holes, many of which have been drilled through several inches of solid granite. To repeat such an operation today, we'd need a hydraulic drill, and even then, we'd have to use a diamond tip to ensure the tool could penetrate the rock. That wasn't an option for these ancient Egyptian workers, and in truth, we have no idea what kind of tools they might have used for the task. They certainly didn't leave any tool marks on the sides of the holes, which are almost impossibly smooth. Historians tell us that the only tools used in the making of these structures were stone and wooden tools and copper saws.
None of them would have been up to the task of making these holes, and so we have to ask ourselves how it was done. Sadly, scientists don't have an answer. Ascend into the vast, lonely skies above the Torgai region of Kazakhstan if you truly wish to witness our next mystery with your own eyes. It is a series of enormous geometric shapes etched into the desert, comparable to the famous Nazca lines in Peru and perhaps even surpassing them in terms of both size and complexity. Archaeologist Dimitri Day was the first to notice the shapes using Google Earth. When seen from ground level, the shapes are an indistinguishable collection of earthen mounds, but from an aerial vantage point, they become crosses, circles, squares, and lines. They vary in size between 200 and 1,400 feet and are spread across an area of almost 400 square miles. Archaeologists believe that they were made around 8,000 years ago. The amount of work that would be involved in creating these shapes would have been enormous, as would the level of communication and coordination required to ensure they made coherent shapes. How anyone was able to do this when they couldn't see the full picture from above is unexplained. Perhaps more important is the question of why anyone would do this when they'd have no way of seeing or appreciating the finished product.
Modern aviation is hailed as a 20th century triumph, or at least that is the sanitized history we are conditioned to believe. It appears the forbidden reality might be far harder to swallow. Welcome to the enigma of Vimanas, ancient Indian chariots that allegedly surged into the heavens, spewing fire and water as they ascended. It would be effortless to dismiss them as an ancient myth if references to them didn't haunt so many texts written independently of each other. They are identified by name in both Hindi and Sanskrit scriptures dating back 3,500 years. The most staggering blueprint of them comes from the Veda, claiming the interior of these flying vessels contained 12 pillars, a wheel, a control console, and 300 articulated pivot points. Another chronicle, the Ramayana, explains that ownership of Vimanas was reserved for the ruling elite, a detail corroborated by the Mahabharata texts. There is no physical proof that a single Vimana ever survived, yet why did so many ancient scribes describe them as if they'd witnessed them with their own eyes?
Everyone recognizes the iconic Swiss Army knife, but perhaps they shouldn't. It is the world's most famous multi-tool, and while it may or may not once have been standard issue in the Swiss Army, the Swiss didn't invent it. That honor goes, like so many important inventions, to the ancient Romans. The Roman answer to the Swiss Army knife was discovered at an undisclosed archaeological site somewhere on the Mediterranean coast in 2019. The archaeologists responsible for the discovery say that it was made during the early 3rd century and features a knife, a fork, a spoon, a spatula, and a toothpick. Based on that, it was probably more likely to be used by soldiers preparing and eating meals than it was for attacking enemies, although the knife would obviously be handy in that regard. The fact that the knife is made of silver rather than a cheaper metal suggests that it belonged to a high-ranking officer. As only one such object has ever been found, we don't know if it was a commonplace item or whether this is a unique object, possibly invented by the very same person who used it. If that were the case, they were around 1,500 years ahead of their time.
Pythagoras Cup. Our next artifact is so wrapped up in myth and legend that we almost don't know where to start with its origin story. This is the Pythagoras Cup, which is sometimes also known as the Tantalus Cup. The most commonly told story about it is that it was invented by the legendary genius Pythagoras of Samos as a way of preventing his workers from getting drunk on the job. The drinking vessel works just the same as any other, so long as it's filled up to the correct point, but anything beyond that results in the entire contents being expelled out of the bottom of the cup and probably all over the person holding it. Cleverly, the cup contains a U-shaped pipe hidden at its center. As the cup fills with liquid, pressure builds up inside the pipe until it can take no more and dumps everything out of the base. As this would probably have been quite funny to watch, there's every chance that it was created as a practical joke rather than a way of keeping workers relatively sober. It might have had nothing to do with Pythagoras at all,
but the 2,600-year-old philosopher's name is attached to it anyway. The Roman Lycurgus Cup. We have celebrated the incredible ancient Romans several times during this video already, and now we shall do so once more. Observe the Lycurgus Cup closely. Is the glass green or red? Remarkably, it is both. The visible shade depends entirely on your viewing angle and the direction of the light source hitting the surface. This breathtaking visual trick exists because microscopic specks of gold and silver were integrated during the glass-blowing phase. These fragments are merely 50 nanometers wide, meaning we can argue the Romans pioneered nanotechnology, as every speck is 1,000 times tinier than a single grain of salt. We remain clueless regarding how the Roman mastermind behind this specific vessel managed to manipulate them. They surely lacked a microscope for guidance 1,600 years ago. The probability of these elements entering the blend by mistake is 0. Therefore, whoever crafted this exquisite decorative glassware knew precisely what they were achieving. They may have been the unique individual in the Roman Empire who did, however. Nothing comparable has been discovered elsewhere within former Roman lands. The aluminum wedge of Aiud. Humans first produced aluminum 2 centuries ago. We want you to remember that fact as we analyze our next unbelievable relic. It was discovered in Romania in 1973. But since Romania was a communist and isolated nation then, it remained hidden from the broader scientific world until much more recently. The object, which seems to have been carved and manufactured by human fingers, is a complete mystery. It is comprised of aluminum, but is also 250,000 years old. Judging by its form and structure, it appears it might once have served as a tool. There were no people around to construct tools 250,000 years ago, and even if there were, they wouldn't have possessed the capability to utilize this metal to build it. The conclusions of the Romanian laboratory were so shocking that the item was transported to a different lab in Lausanne, Switzerland for validation. The Swiss researchers achieved the identical results as their Romanian colleagues. Predictably, conspiracy theorists suggest that the relic is a fragment of an alien ship left behind after a voyage to Earth in the ancient past. Perhaps they are correct. It is not like scientists have a superior explanation. The Iron Pillar of Delhi. Is the Iron Pillar of Delhi a specimen of metalwork that was over 1,000 years ahead of its age, or a fortunate fluke? Researchers have never been able to settle on the solution to that mystery, and it is likely that they never will. What can be stated with absolute confidence is that the column, which is occasionally also called the Ashoka Pillar, has remained grandly and stubbornly rust-free in Delhi, India for 1,500 years. The whole exterior of the 22-foot-high monument is covered in an exceptionally slim film of misawite, which protects the iron under it from contact with oxygen, which would cause the creation of corrosion. Exactly how such a scientifically difficult feat could be accomplished by the basic coal ovens of 1,500 years ago is mysterious. Experts believe that it may have been a random occurrence triggered by the iron merging with slag, lime, and humid air while it settled, as the builders who crafted it would have had no notion that the rust-resistant layer even occurred. They would have perceived it as a wonder. It took many centuries for anyone to develop a purposeful method of corrosion prevention, so either the Indians guarded their knowledge or they never meant to rust-proof the pillar at all. The Shepherd's Monument. The Shugborough inscription is merely 10 letters long. That doesn't provide much space for it to generate a lasting enigma that has endured for many generations, but it has succeeded regardless. This lettering is etched into the Shepherd's Monument at Shugborough Hall, England. The monument itself stands as a fascinating relic. It is a carving that includes a relief inspired by a masterpiece by Poussin. Peter Shoemakers is the artist who fashioned it in 1763, using Poussin's The Shepherds of Arcadia as a creative blueprint. However, for motivations known only to himself, he included the characters OUOSVAV and V underneath it. Slightly beneath that sequence of symbols are the letters D and M. They are not Roman digits, and they do not match any recognized historical cipher. Most scholars suspect that the script is a hidden memo from shoemakers, yet nobody has been able to decipher what it implies. Even the famous Charles Dickens once turned his intellect to the problem, and he failed to produce a result. Perhaps Peter was simply a joker, in which case we are certain he would be glad to learn that folks are still baffled by the system he devised nearly 250 years after he moved away. Subscribe to our profile, activate the alert icon, and love viewing fresh clips on our platform. Cheers for viewing, and catch you later.